Hello viewers, my name is Adam.
And I'm Aaron.
This is Fullmetal Productions bring you the TV anime review.
So we're going right back with Fullmetal Alchemist, but this time we're talking about Brotherhood.
Yes, this is the second adaptation of Hiromu Arakawa's most famous manga that's been adapted from Bones again. Thankfully they were able to redo and do a more faithfully adapted version of the her famous novel.
That's right. This one is really much geared towards following the events that actually happens in the manga, other than the original adaptation, which veered off at a certain point, and that was actually really earlier on in that series.
And like I would say, from the 2003 adaptation, I was like, what someone we previously reiterated when we did that review is that that version tended to be more like thrown to the side a lot ever since Brotherhood was finally released.
But that doesn't mean that that particular series was not as good as that one. In a lot of ways, it's actually went on, even though it went on its own way, we feel as though it was just as important, if not just as eventful.
And it was like, sure, this became more favorable because it finally adapts to manga. As we said from that other review, that the adaptation did certain things better that Brotherhood ended up doing, mainly from the world building perspective, but not to say that Brotherhood doesn't do its fair share. It's just that when we discuss the story of Brotherhood, the premise is still the same, and still the same goals of the Elder Brothers still wants to find the Philosopher's Stone to get their bodies back.
This is true. And of course, along the way, we are definitely introduced to the characters we met in the first adaptation, Colonel Roy Mustang,
the state military
themselves. Definitely Renri, who's a fan favorite in their own right, and various others. But because this is adapting the manga, we are introduced to characters that we did not get a chance to fully embrace.
Not only just characters, whole regions. This one, instead, like, while the 2003 adaptation, it dived more deeper into the state military, like it introduced the state military, but more delved into their conflict with the Ishvalans. That was very uniquely done with the 2003 adaptation. This one does it more fleshes out the military, state military world and all their characters, but expanding the geography of the reality in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Yeah, so we're again, you got Ishval that was pretty much a unique adaptation or a unique look at a Middle Eastern side of the world. Brotherhood introduces us into more of the Asian area,
the Eastern aspect.
Yes. Hemisphere,
mainly through new characters, and especially when we get into how they reintroduces the homunculi. That's also very more different from the 2003 version. Going to hear, well, I'll say from a story standpoint of Brotherhood, the plot does become more bigger in scope as far as the the situation and how the main plot of the villain, and this point being the character named Father.
Yeah, with this variation of the story, it's not necessarily as close to the chess version where it was just centering on their father's long lost love interest who ended up becoming a villain. No, this one again we're dealing with a character named Father who has lofty ambitions and basically becoming a godlike figure, and his way of doing that is through sacrificing multiple individuals, if not an entire country, to gain those particular attributes.
And the idea, something that we noticed in the Fullmetal Alchemist is the truth behind the Philosopher's Stone, even more so, and Brotherhood, as well as more introspective understanding of the of the reality behind the gates of once somebody does the sacred taboo.
When someone in their world uses alchemy to try and bring back the dead, this causes an imbalance that they truly just can't do. Human life is super complex, and yes, you might succeed in bringing back a form of life, if not the reanimation of tissue. You cannot recreate the soul. With the two brothers, Edward and Alric, both losing their bodies in certain ways, and you have various others along the way, like their teacher, and who gets parts of her reproduction system and her internal organs are ripped out from her. Again, it's a very taboo concept, and it introduces various new interesting ways into the story and the lore of Fullmetal Alchemist in their world.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we start Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, weirdly enough, it doesn't go right away into adapting the full manga. It actually starts up with its own original episode that just gives you a basic idea of what you're going to get into. And then after that, it does begin doing the manga, but it does it in the first the first core of episodes is rushed. Because Bones once again is adapting this manga, it kind of assumes that you watched the 2003 adaptation.
So it basically tries to breeze past those original first steps that in both the manga and the show actually already iterated from the last one, and then right after those first episodes is when the series really opens up.
That's when the pacing becomes more steadier, and the stakes become much more understandable. Now, like the 2003 adaptation, it veers more to like dark fantasy. So a lot of darker situations does come at play. But with Brotherhood, it more has a better balance in tone in regards. I think that's is also a little bit more favorable and compared to the first adaptation, because both series deals with some dark subject matter. Brotherhood has more moments of levity, a little bit injected your humor, as well as more of a hopeful outcome, especially near toward the end, as opposed to 2003, which mirrored towards more of a dreadful tone, very intimate.
It didn't basically a lift up until the movie came around, and in that movie, it was pretty dark stuff. The subject matter was going on, and then towards the end of it is when you got some form of a happier ending. In Brotherhood, you get more of that. It's that full circle concept.
It's more of both versions are complete in their own ways. It's just that how they handle the ending. I would say same destination, different avenue.
Yeah.
And it's like different in terms of the outcome. And it's luckily enough that it's still done so, but there's characters. Edward and Alphonse, still the same type of adaptation between the two.
I believe in this particular version more so than the original one. I feel as though Alphonse gets a little bit more of a leg up in where his placement in the story is. Like, he gets a little bit more agency, especially in later episodes.
And because when we talk about the understanding of the reality behind the gates of after doing human transmutation, we understand the stakes involved. With how the urgency with Edward wanting to get his brother back in his first place.
And then you have the concept of what happens with their father. In one scene, their father.
Von Hohenheim.
In this one, he's again still more standoffish with the boys, but in a more stern way, because there's a lot of, especially because in this version, and I would say in both versions, he definitely has a hand into why a lot of the things are going down, especially when it comes to his boys. But in this one, I feel as though he's even more so because he's has such a connection towards the main villain.
Von Hohenheim, he has a hand in creating the different versions of the homunculi. Father being back to the first one. If you go by the old tellings of the shadow in the flask situation, that's sort of like in that little story from different medium altogether. But from what we get from the homunculi in this one, similar, like about I would say the four of them remain the same, but
In those four again is envy, gluttony, greed,
and lust.
Yeah.
But greed was different in that his story, like when his story was basically like ended cut short in 2003 version because after his first altercation with Edward, that was his story.
Yeah, that was it. But in this one, he gets an extended storyline. If not because Greed is one of those characters where they gain new life in this sort of way towards halfway point in the story.
Mm-hmm. And it's more geared towards when they expand upon the Eastern aspect of the world.
But then you also gain new characters, new versions of the characters like Sloth,
who's completely different from the 2003 version.
Yeah, this one I feel as though embodies that character even more so, or at least the sin that he's supposed to be.
But in a more monstrous aspect.
But then you have the characters of Wrath and Pride. Now, if you follow the original adaptation, you might understand that in that rendition, Wrath was being played by a little boy in that version.
A boy that has
ties to like the brother's teacher. But but you realize that the homunculi in that original version were a direct result and consequence of the alchemist playing with the taboo of human transmutation. So in that respect, Wrath was the embodiment of their teacher's results of that experiment. And then you also had the character of Pride.
And Pride in Shot's 3 version was their version of King Bradley. In Brotherhood, the situation is somewhat flipped in regards.
Yeah.
King Bradley, who is a leader of state and military.
Still the state leader, still...
but he is Wrath in this one.
Yeah.
And with him as Wrath, him is talk about military, he's a one-man army.
Yeah, he is a complete and total unit. Wow, the things that man was able to do with his swords and taking and mowing down folks was just awe-inspiring and then entirely just frightening. Yeah, he was this precision on the battlefield is you understand why he embodies the concept of Wrath.
And then we talk with Pride, another boy situation, but completely different in terms of execution.
Yeah, this again, I feel as though this adaptation of Fullmetal Alchemist, and because it's so close towards the manga, so this is where the homunculi truly come into their embrace of the sins that they embody. And Pride definitely embodies the concept of pride or vainglory, if you want to be nasty. Yeah, this individual is sinister when you finally understand who he is, and such an interesting character to dive into, especially when they involve themselves in the story with the brothers and all the other characters that they get in touch with.
A character that we decided to hold off on to talk until we got to Brotherhood is the character of Roy Mustang.
Yeah.
And Roy Mustang, similar character where he starts off in both iterations, but his trajectory and character development is drastically different.
Mm-hmm.
And it mainly involves around his reaction after the fate of another fellow character named Hughes, his best friend in the military. I'll say that in 2003, not to spoil too much on that regards, let's say that he goes into a depression. And it mainly goes to not only what happens to Hughes, but also once Roy understands a lot more of the state military's involvement of the Ishvalan people.
But in Brotherhood, he takes that misery and he turns it to straight fuel for revenge. And the stakes he goes to not only track down the individuals responsible, but also execute those individuals is terrifying. Like, you truly have an understanding as to why this individual is so highly ranked within the military and why he has so much push when it comes to his involvement into the story and with the characters that follow him.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another character that I do actually have to point out, and that has to deal with the characters of the Armstrong family, and specifically the sibling of one of the Armstrong that we got to be introduced in the first adaptation.
Yeah, both one. We mostly deals with the brother, and like both because he's more involved with like a third strong hand with Roy Mustang, but we also get introduced to his sister. We like in both iterations, we understand that he's part of a very important military background family, but we don't necessarily see the expansion of it until Brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And to see the interesting dynamic of him being his sister being more of the matriarch of the family.
She takes nobody's crap. She is a straight to business woman, and we love her for that.
But we didn't talk about Renri in the last one. Mainly, and also there's not much, unfortunately, not much to discuss on her character.
No, not really.
She's the love interest of the two boys.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the lead mechanic that they go to. Not really much of not really much story involved, impactful. That's very much, which is sad, really.
It's true.
But as far as production goes, this is also another difference between the show, two different versions.
Yeah, and this one I feel as though it, again, because it's supposed to be tracking itself towards the manga, it does feel as though it is animated to feel as though it's coming off the pages.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and I'll say there's a difference in how the show looks compared to the 2003 version. With the 3 versions more like it was because it was still done the traditional cell route with only a little few digital enhancements. This one's fully done digital with HD, so it's full screen. And they really did put out all the stops on this one to really elevate.
It's so super fluid. Not to say that the first one wasn't fluid at all. It was. It totally was. I actually really loved that. That was half the reason why we loved that show. But I do feel as though this one gained a little bit more of an edge, especially when it comes to certain major fights that goes down.
And the bigger scope of the fight scenes, it gets not only more dynamic, but more explosive, but also more grander because it's starting to be more of it feels more of a global event.
Yeah.
As opposed to more personal, small, intimate stakes that were involved in the 2003 version.
Mm-hmm.
This like really was saying the standards of what comes into modern day anime, of having high production values for TV episodes. The music on it is also a good reflection on the difference between the two adaptations.
Yeah.
With the first one being more of a more somber or a humble type tone. This one played by Akira Senju has more of an operatic acoustics with it.
It definitely makes you feel as though every particular scene hangs upon you a little bit more.
And the more of a military aspect with a lot of percussion. It shows the difference between this one being more of an action heavy added like version of the story,
where the other one was more of a story driven.
It's more drama.
More drama.
At the end of the day, it really does take on what type of what tone you prefer.
Yeah.
The only real criticism that I do have with Brotherhood is the mere fact it does have a very rough beginning.
And I will also iterate there's for certain characters, like the characters we met that comes from the Eastern version, Eastern world within the story. I feel as though they deserve to have a little bit of extra more character development, especially when they introduce their own variation or style of alchemy, being the Dragon's Pulse. I really wanted to go into that a little bit more.
Yeah, they would like, even though we do introduce aspects of to the Eastern, the existence at least of that.
You don't get too much of it except for what the characters say about it.
But both of them, there are many of their pros with very little cons to really balance out each other.
Totally true.
Makes it provide each one is a companion piece with the other. So it makes it for a complete package. But you can choose either one to float your boat.
So at the end of the day, where we find this particular adaptation of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood,
This is still amazing.
yeah,
It really does depend on what version you want to go. A lot of people tend to go veer towards Brotherhood because it's closer to the manga.
but you can't deny that the original adaptation was just as amazing. Again, it's literally a tonal, decision. It's dealer's choice.
Yeah. And so there we have it. That was a review for Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And if you, like we said, we did review the 2003 adaptation as well, so it's also on this channel.
Where do y'all fall? Are you a first adaptation or are you a Brotherhood adaptation? Do you like both? What aspects do you like from either one? What kind of aspects do you feel as though they could have worked on a little bit better?
Mm-hmm. And are you looking forward to Hiromu Arakawa's next anime adaptation of The Shadows of the Demon Realm?
Oh, I'm definitely going to be there. I got to see where this is going.
That starts in April 2026, and we'll hopefully have a season 1 review once that is over with. Stay tuned for other great media that we have posted on this channel. My name is Adam.
And I'm Aaron.
Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and also follow us on other social media outlets, Threads, Instagram, and Letterboxd for all things that media that we don't post on this channel.
See y'all later.
See ya.